a man has to work on DoorDash when he's really an air traffic controller, that we applauded, and we're up here talking about how much some money is going to cost, and the only person that don't have a check coming is him. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a break.
Stephen A. Smith walking off the set because he was frustrated with the disconnect between the people who were feeling the pain and the people who were playing the game, right? Now, it's only gotten worse. And my brother joins me right now, Stephen A. Smith. Always good to see you, big man. Thank you for being with me. Oh, that is a quality shirt that you have on. But I can't say I'm surprised. SNAP and WIC, okay, what we used to call food stamps, right? 50 million Americans, funding is going to be cut. I don't even think most Americans know how many people need help to just get food on the table. Do you believe that the disconnect between the Jack Chris's, that father we met that night, and the people who are going to be feeling this pain, do you think the politicians are getting the message that they think they're gaining advantage in this, but they're actually losing their own base?
They're absolutely losing their own base, but they don't care at the moment, because if you're on the left, you're too preoccupied with hating Trump, and if you're on the right, you're too preoccupied with fawning over him to ensure that you remain in power, and what gets lost in the shuffle is the American people. You are talking to a black man that was once on food stamps, that knows what welfare is, that knows what government cheese tastes like, that knows what it's like to worry about having a roof over your head, clothes on your back, and food on your table. That's why I always say I ain't giving up my money now, because I worked diligently for years to make sure my primary motivation in life is to never to return to the state of affairs that I grew up with, that my mother worked her tail off for decades to ensure that I had a better life and made sacrifices beyond comprehension. But these politicians are not like that, and they prove it to you, and they prove it to you with their policies. For example, you know, you could talk about the left or the right. Last time I checked, all of them are still getting paid. All of them still have their health care. None of them have been furloughed or fired. Why haven't you all? You can raise your hand and volunteer and say that you're not accepting any money, but the reality is you have a choice. While there are millions of Americans you're not giving a choice to, because you all on Capitol Hill had all of this time to negotiate, whether it's a continual resolution, whether it's the ACA subsidies, or whatever you want to talk about. You've had ample time to address these issues to make sure that the American people were prioritized, and you didn't do it. Now, it's one thing to sit up there and disagree about the border. It's one thing to disagree about safety in the streets. It's one thing to disagree about the economy. But as long as people are out there with their jobs and still working, you might have somewhat of an excuse for throwing something to the back burner for a day or a month or a couple of months or 6 months or whatever. They had this CR issue back in March. Chuck Schumer lost tremendous support because he wouldn't support a government shutdown back then. Here we are, you had 6 months to get this resolved and you haven't done it. It's egregious. And all of them are to blame on both sides, because none of them, and I'm not talking about individuals like the representatives that you had. I'm not speaking to individuals not giving a damn about the American people. I'm saying the collective body that is our federal government should be purged. They all should go, because they all are sickening right now. They all are.
And yet, what do we know? In the midterms, the incumbency retention percentage is above 95%. Because of how the system is actually rigged, you know, between money and incumbency effect and gerrymandering. It's hard to get anybody out, man.
Yeah, well, even though the president is obviously a culprit in it all, it still doesn't negate the fact that when he says the system is rigged, this is the kind of fodder that makes you believe him. Because when you see this kind of stuff taking place, and then you hear about issues like redistricting and gerrymandering and all of this stuff, you say, okay, this is what they're trying to do. It's politicians picking for the voters instead of the voters picking politicians, right? Well, if that's a roundabout way of saying it or showcasing that the system is rigged, they're not going to go into specificity when it comes to what Trump is talking about, knowing that he's just as big of a culprit as anybody else. They're going to look at his overall branding of the political apparatus that we're under, and they're going to remember him using the words rigged, 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 and 77 million people at least did say, and probably would say again, he's absolutely right. And then we get nowhere. Same old stuff, different day.
Especially when this ends, unless there's somebody who's ambitious enough to put out a unanimous consent motion that there are no more shutdowns, that they make them illegal. I mean, that's something that would actually spark a little bit of hope among the majority of American people. But it'll be a CR, but nothing will be done. So all this pain will be for nothing, because nothing will change. Nothing will change. The subsidies won't change, but the reimbursements won't change. None of it will change.
That's fine, but I would ask you to trust the resolve of the American people. And what I mean by that is that if you have a job, just like the air traffic controller that stood up at the microphone during our town hall weeks ago, right? You got a job to go to. Yes, it's painstaking. Yes, it's a headache. But you know what? America has incredible intestinal fortitude, and somehow, some way, under the most adverse of circumstances, we find a way to figure it out if you let us play the game, if you put us in a position where we can somehow, some way dictate some kind of outcome. But when you strip us of our ability to earn, when we don't even have a job, when we don't even have a paycheck to expect, then you're really, really cutting off their knees, and you're robbing them of the ability to adjust, adapt, and fight accordingly. And I think that's what's so egregious about what's transpiring with the shutdown. If I were to be a politician, if I ever were to run for office, one of the first things that I would do is what you said. They don't get paid, we don't get paid. There are no shutdowns, ever. You understand? Because that means you're asking to be compensated for exercising the dereliction of duty. You don't want to go to work to do your job, but you still want to get paid as if you are doing it while you're costing other people their pay. This is America. This is the richest country in the world, they say, okay? We're supposed to be a mosaic. We're supposed to be prosperous. How in God's name could you sit here as an American citizen, as an elected official, and stomach the fact that over 1 million federal employees, and as of this Friday, our military, who vowed and swore to protect and serve us, they're not going to get paid? How could you sit there with a straight face and think that that's okay under any circumstances if you're an elected official? There shouldn't be an elected official that should show their face in public. They shouldn't want to be on camera. They shouldn't want to walk the streets. They shouldn't want to do anything but be up on Capitol Hill, and don't leave the damn state capitol until you handle your business on the part of the American people. But they won't do it because we're always the last that they think about, no matter what they say. And that's the damn problem.
Stephen A., will you stay with me? And I want to get your perspective on how big a deal this mobbed-up sports gaming thing is going to be. So let me take a break, and I'll come back with Stephen A. Smith, because nobody understands, you know, what the real reach of the rot is within professional sports better than the man. So thank you for staying. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. When we come back, you know what we're going to do. We're going to get the truth from the source. All right, we're back with Stephen A. Smith. So what I'm told, now, Stephen A. got into it like he was like, hey, I think that part of this investigation is what we're seeing political ramifications from the Trump administration. Kash Patel came at him, but that's because Stephen A. is so relevant that everybody wants to, you know, he's like a big piece of government cheese right now. But what I want to hear, Stephen A., is how deep do you think the roots are in this? And do you think it spreads to other sports? Because that's what I'm hearing, is that this is not all of it. Well, this is just a little piece of it.
Well, you know, athletes gamble, coaches gamble, some executives gamble, some owners may gamble. It's par for the course. And about 7 years ago, when the Supreme Court struck down a federal mandate prohibiting sports gaming, gaming in the world of sports, everybody's latched onto it, or at least an abundance of folks in sports league have latched onto it. The NBA itself is, as DraftKings and FanDuel as a sponsor, so we understand that. And when you look at it from that perspective, it's a very unfortunate story. I know all three guys. I'm friends with Chauncey Billups. I've known Damon Jones for years. And obviously Terry Rozier is a really good NBA player that's been around for a while, that's made over $150 million in his career. And so, to hear this news, it was kind of shocking. It wasn't shocking that folks were betting because, you're on the plane rides and stuff like that. You're playing cards all the time, dominoes all the time, stuff like that. That stuff's been going on for ages. But when you hear of something like this, and then you hear about the mob tied to it, and then of course, if you hear anything remotely associated with the integrity of the game being compromised, like, letting somebody know you're going to be coming out of a game and then they bet on it and the mob throw you $100,000 and stuff like that. So those are very, very serious allegations that the NBA is going to take very seriously, dating back to the Tim Donaghy situation with the official back in 2007, those six, if I remember correctly, and what he ultimately pled guilty to. And I was very fond of, and I knew the former Commissioner David Stern, God rest himself, his soul, very, very well. He didn't play that nonsense. He took over that. But in this case, it's the FBI. And the league, to some degree, is at the mercy of Kash Patel, the FBI director, and the FBI itself. Now, Kash Patel could act like I'm off my rocker and, all of this other stuff. He talked that nonsense all he wants to. I ain't got time to be getting into it with no FBI director. What I will tell you is that I said what I said. I meant what I meant. I'm not stuttering. I'm not saying in any way that the investigation is not on a legal standing, that it's illegitimate or anything like that. What I said was, for those looking for the president to spare them or to provide a helping hand of assistance, like he's prone to do from time to time for people he likes, don't expect that here. The protests, people not wanting to come to the White House, former star calling them, or no, not a former star, but a present star calling them a bum, this kind of stuff. Well, LeBron James called him a bum, stuff like that. The man is not going to forget. You and I doing this, more so you than me, of course. I'm not lying. You know how petty he can be. And if this inconveniences the league, who he believes have gravitated to a leftist ideology that serves to dog him at every chance. Listen, he doesn't have any problem inconveniencing them whatsoever. And that's exactly what he gave Kash Patel okay to do, period.
Yep, I think you're spot on. Stephen A. Smith, I love you and I thank you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.